Enterprise architecture isn't dead, it just needs a better story. This week on The Architect's Lens, we sit down with Wolfgang Goebl, a pioneer in enterprise design, to rethink how organizations shape strategy, structure, and systems. If you've ever felt the disconnect between bold visions and real-world execution, this episode is your bridge. Let's get edgy.
Hello and welcome to our new episode. Today joining us we have a guest, Wolfgang, who will shortly introduce himself. And as always, Savi is here with me, and we hope to give you another exciting session of Architect's Lens. Wolfgang, great to have you here. Welcome to our podcast. Tell us a bit about yourself for our listeners. Who is Wolfgang? What makes him tick? And what kind of drives you forward these days?
First of all, thanks for the invitation. Thanks for having me. It's always a fun to do podcasts, and we already had a nice conversation before that. This was really fun. So let's keep it fun. So I won't talk that much about myself.
Sure.
I started my career in IT. So I started computer science, and then I was a programmer for 7 years. Then I made the usual career from business analysis, project management, and finally 16 years ago to enterprise architecture. So I have this engineering mindset. And what I've learned after many years is that engineering mindset is special. So I'm an engineer at heart, trying hard to move out of this engineering silo, because I'm now 33 years after starting my career. I'm a firm believer that changing architectures and enterprises and changing systems, socio-technical systems, has way more to do with soft skills, philosophy maybe, and people topics. So that's maybe a learning from an engineer to a person that knows how important the social aspects are. So that's part of it. And I think after 7 years of doing enterprise architecture, I found out that maybe we don't have the impact we want to have. So enterprise architect, when I started my career and I became an enterprise architect, that was big. I mean, the salary improvement was big, and now I'm the architect, right? That feels really powerful. Took me some years to find out that I'm maybe not the most powerful person in my company. And there are people that have a higher salary, managers, and they, with a little line that they can use their pen and strike through some departments and close businesses and so on. They have way more impact on the architectures. So that's kind of, there was some frustration because in my company there was a merger. I was working at the biggest Austrian bank back in the days. And overnight, there was a merger with another bank, and the whole enterprise architecture fell apart because the merger was quite political, and they cut down some lines of businesses and so on. And you know what can happen when a merger comes. And then there was a lot of frustration and limited impact. And then I went to other companies, and I did enterprise architecture in the railway industry and did some consulting projects. And I found similar situations everywhere. So that enterprises are flawed in many regards. We all know that there is pain and frustration, ill-designed organizational structures, technical debt. Maybe that was in the beginning of my career, the big topic. We want to consolidate the application landscapes and so on. But to do so, you must have an impact on the enterprise. And in the position, I did not have an impact, not enough impact, which can be quite frustrating. And I have talked to so many enterprise architects in my career. So we all share a similar frustration. We have a limited impact.
I would agree. What I think is kind of the underlying cause of that, and also just to draw the line, that it is kind of a usual, or it's more usual to have an enterprise architect from like technical engineering background, right? Rather than, let's call it, business background. So that's maybe kind of an also the reason. Why is it that there is this kind of discrepancy over impact between enterprise architecture and management? I mean, maybe it's self-evident, right? But what do you think is underlying cause?
I would say the term architecture itself is technical. Huh? There's building architecture, electrical, machine engineering, mechanical engineering architecture, if you want. Yeah. So the engineering is part of the term already. So whenever you introduce yourself as an architect, everybody says, software architect, you are the one that structures something. Yeah, and that's not wrong. I mean, architecture is all about structuring complex systems into modules and interfaces. Loose coupling and so on is everywhere. If you go to electrical engineering, electronics, it's all the same idea, yeah, to have technical systems and you modularize them and you engineer them. So that the term comes from engineering. Yeah? Manage, on the other hand, comes from a totally different school. There you do an MBA, and it's all about money and power and making the right decisions. So when you go to a business school, you can go to Harvard and do an MBA there, wherever, Stanford. What you learn there is macroeconomics, microeconomics, making big decisions, leadership. What you don't learn is how to design enterprises. So they are not trained to do so, but they do so because they are in charge. I mean, they of course, they yep.
They are basically architecting the business, right, without actually calling it. I mean, you mentioned, okay,
Exactly.
yeah, as an architect, you try to connect structures, make them work together, and in a sense, like a business management would also try to do so in this more of a business landscape or the structures, organizational structures within the company, right? But in fact, they are dealing with company architecture, just not the technical one, maybe more a cultural and economic architecture. I don't know. I don't want to use the term business architect because it has a different meaning, right? So something that is uh, definitely,
Business
get,
architecture is IT architecture in disguise.
yes,
So
yeah,
it still comes from IT people. If you look at the work of Business Architecture Guild, I
yeah.
hope they are not they don't watch and kill me for that, but it's still IT as an IT mindset. Yeah, and there are structures in the business. Yeah, you call them organizational structures. Yeah, we
Mhm.
structure into teams and departments, and that's what managers are used to. So there are structures. Without any doubt, you have products, and you structure it in product hierarchies, and you have organizational units. You have documents. So there are business. You have objects you deal with in the business. There are definitely structures. So businesses have architecture, but their leaders are not trained to architect, and that's the pity.
What
So
would you
I have
say?
another
Yes, sorry.
sorry, I have another question before we go deeper into this rabbit hole. What's the difference between a solution architect and an enterprise architect?
I see this is quite classical. Yeah, so
Okay.
solution architects are usually assigned to certain projects and help those
Okay.
projects and maybe 10, 20 developers in these projects, software developers, to follow
Mhm.
technical guidelines, use the right Java libraries, typically use microservices,
Okay.
whatever architects. They're also big in domain-driven design is a big topic there. So you already have
Right.
those business models, but they are happy
Mhm.
when their product owner is ready. So for a
Okay.
product team, usually, and they have a solution architect assigned to the team, hopefully, they
Right.
follow the product owner on a single solution. Yeah? And the challenge, if you design or architect for the whole enterprise, is how to align maybe hundreds of such development in parallel, and how can we orchestrate that? And that's more the enterprise question, right?
So would you say an enterprise architect is less domain aligned and more technology aligned? Would
No,
that be a fair assumption, or the other way around?
the other way around. The solution architects I know are really have really a solid understanding of the latest tech the latest Java edition, the latest user interface frameworks, and that's important, of course, to guide the younger developers from a technical point of view. Asynchronous messaging and all those technical architecture patterns are more on the solution level. When it comes to the enterprise, it's about how can we align those solutions into the direction of the company. How to align all of these products to a shared strategy, purposes, and so on.
I have a so when you start with like company goals, right, and company strategy, and then from that you formulate your enterprise architecture, right? How could, in your experience, how well do teams, let's say, translate those enterprise architecture guidelines into solution architecture and into development practices? I was in situations where, development teams were not able to interpret, enterprise architecture and how it impacts their work. Right?
Yeah, that's everywhere. So that's a challenge for both sides. It's a challenge for solution architects. They have a tough timeline usually. They follow a product owner. They get clear requirements, and they maybe see their tribe or their project is their social entity, if you want. Yeah, and the enterprise architects are 2 floors above, so their office is somewhere else, and they are talking to they are wearing their best suits every day. They're talking to management, and then they create, archimate, whatever diagrams that are not related to the solution architecture diagrams. So the solution architects, they use C4 or ARC42. They have the language, and I really like those approaches. But if you don't manage to seamlessly trace and connect the solution architecture deliverables to some more capability map that then is connected to strategy. There's Gregor Hope, I think, has this elevator book. How can we do that? I think it's not so hard from a methodological point of view. It's hard because people don't really understand themselves. So as an enterprise architect, you are in a difficult position. On the one hand, you must serve management and you want to have a seat at the table, you want to be seen. Usually a CEO doesn't really care about the enterprise architect, we must be honest, right? Because he thinks they are only IT. And I've been fighting my whole career for I want to be there, I need this, everybody wants to have the seat. It's really tough. So usually enterprise architects are not so too much connected to strategy as they want to be, which weakens their models. So then they start drawing capabilities as good as they can. Good enterprise architects talk a lot to business people to create their more business-oriented architectural diagrams, and hopefully get in touch with the people creating the strategies, because that's really also a challenge. Yeah? And then you have two customers. You can look up to the strategy people, to the top-level executives, and then you have maybe 10, 20, 30 solution architects and maybe hundreds of development teams that want your guidance. Yeah. And everybody wants to stay autonomous to a certain degree. Yeah? We have hundreds of products with the product owners. The team is everything. Product owners, just follow the product owners. We don't care so much about the enterprise. That's a kind of a mindset you find in the solution teams quite often. Enterprise awareness, maybe that's a mindset I like to bring in. Yeah? So if a team is product aware and we need to deliver this next month, then you have some pressure. And you have social structures, you have friends in your team, you follow the product owner. So this is your tribe, and that's your goal. And the enterprise architect doesn't really care about a single project and their goals. Yeah? So you have the conflict, have a social conflict as well.
Yeah, so it sounds like a kind of complexity / communication problem, right? Where we are, as a, let's say, development team, we are unaware of organizational goals, or they don't align with our next delivery, right? It's something, and we are actually graded by our next delivery, whether we're successful or not. So so there is this disconnect, I would say, with what is an organizational strategy, how it aligns with enterprise architecture, how it aligns with product teams and solution architecture. And this is so. Why hasn't that been solved already? I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah, we've been having this problem for like 30, 40 years, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Why haven't
everybody
we solved it?
complains about, but I'm the one who has all the answers, right? So that's why
and
I'm here.
that's why you're here, right?
Yeah, we got the right guy. There we
Yeah,
go.
because we want to hear about it, right?
I mean, the easiest answer is it's tough, okay? And the tough thing is that the enterprise architects, or we call them enterprise designers, but it's similar, must be able to connect to the business experts. So building trust, you have a lot of social skills you need to build. Yeah, you need the information, and what you really want to establish is a collaborative co-design process. Yeah, it's not your map capability, whatever. You have a map on enterprise level, an enterprise-wide capability map, for example, or object map, whatever. And to make it a good map means to involve the broadest variety of stakeholders you can get. You need to talk to the most senior business experts to get this model right, because businesses are complex. They are way too complex for a single enterprise architect to grasp it in a map. So I think what needs to change is kind of a mindset that it's not the enterprise architect who draws those maps that are between strategy and implementation, but to foster a co-creation process. So he must radiate that it's our map, and we have certain goals with this map. So we want to understand what's going on in the enterprise, capabilities, what are we capable of doing, enterprise on one page, what are the business components. And the map can only deliver value if it's used by management for strategic decisions, for product owners to connect where are all the projects connected to which capabilities and so on. And I've not seen a single enterprise architect who manages that the capability map is the one central map in the company.
Yeah. But for instance, again, my experience, and I definitely think you're correct in that, is that the business capability map is brought into the organization by enterprise architect, right? In enterprise architecture. And it should be co-owned with business, or it should even be in the ownership of business, because it's a business capability map. It's not enterprise architecture business capability map, right? And the problem then, I would say, is that those business schools you mentioned in the beginning are not teaching business capability maps or mapping business capabilities to an organization, structures, deliverables, etc. Right? So I think that's the reason why organizations or business management is not adopting, right? Because they are looking at it as it's something that those architects brought in. We don't understand it. Why should we use it? And it's discarded. And usually then, it doesn't make sense for an enterprise architect to, walks around with the business capability maps when nobody reads them, understands them. And again, unfortunately, from my experience as well, it's quite difficult to first, make business use the maps, understand them, and then take ownership, right? Actually, to start thinking about their business through those business capabilities.
I mean, that requires unlearning, because everybody went to a business school or some education. So all the middle and top managers, of course, they are well educated, but not in enterprise design, not in business architecture. So they see, what they use is the org chart, and they use mission and vision statements, maybe KPIs, goals, the tools they are using. And they are so limited. They are not design tools. I would not say mission statement is not really a design tool. It's just a piece of text. And if you do a SWOT analysis, or all of these thousands of management tools that are out there, are not really design tools. You have quadrants, and the 7 whys and the 100 forces and the business model canvas is excellent, by the way, but it stops at a certain level. I would not say that business model canvas is a design method. It's more a canvas which is valuable. It should be a first step towards an enterprise design, and
So
it requires
what do you see?
unlearning.
Yeah, what do you see as let's say benefits of enterprise design, right? As a different category, let's say, than enterprise architecture, right? Because you mentioned enterprise designer, that's not an enterprise architect, right? There are different kind of enterprise design patterns, right? So how does that differ from enterprise architecture and or business management, or where are the overlaps?
Yeah. We don't want to have a religious discussion here, and you can also discuss what is the difference between architecture and design in general. I think it's only what we are used to. So there are interior designers, but building architects. There are software architects, but user interface designers. And the software architects also designing, and the user experience designers also architecting, I think. Yeah. So the terms themselves are largely overlapping. And the reason why we as Intersection Group chose a different term is because enterprise architecture is like burnt earth. So everybody, because then you are in the IT silo. When you introduce
I understand.
and that's the reason. But when I introduce myself as an enterprise designer, they think I'm the one who creates these fancy, colorful user interfaces. That's also a challenge. Yeah. So we don't want to use.
You need a new word.
Yeah, but it's not new.
It's not working then, right? It's not working.
So we don't see it like a religion. We just say people simply design. Yeah, you design your home, you design your holiday, you design. It's like it's a verb to be creative, and that's what it's all about.
It's kind of a freedom as a part of architecture or framework, which are in our minds more constrictive, right? So in naming terms, enterprise designer kind of at least has a notion of not being constrained, right? That's my app.
And we were able to get the domain, so enterprise.design is now our domain, and enterprise architecture was not available, so there are some practical. No, but I think the major difference to enterprise architecture in practice is that I think we, in enterprise design, we have a way broader and more holistic view on enterprises. It's not only about how are we operating, it's not only about capabilities and IT applications and data, and processes. So what is it what we need to operate? That's the architecture part, also in our approach. So we have architecture as one of three, we call it facet, but we have another view that we can take on an enterprise, and that one is identity. So we think it's of even importance to model something like purposes. For example, if you have a mission statement, only a piece of text, strategy, all of these topics, why not model them as elements, and create a purpose hierarchy and say, okay, what's our purpose? How do we name it? And which sub-purposes do exist in order to strive for the higher level purpose? So you decompose something like we heal the world, something really higher level purpose, into more operational purposes in the identity facet. In this second, we don't really discuss the how, we just discuss the why, which is the identity facet. And then we believe another perspective you must have is those of the typical experience designer, not only user interface design, not only user experience design, but the whole wisdom of service designers, customer journeys, and so on. And those disciplines, service designers, UX product designers, are total aliens to the IT architects typically. When you ever facilitated a workshop with the engineers in the room and the people who want to design meaningful services and user experiences and the interior design of a railway station and so on, they are living in totally different worlds today. And bridging those disciplines is fast part of enterprise design. That's the idea.
In which way? So one thing we mentioned before is the kind of disconnect between enterprise architecture and the solution delivery teams, right?
Mhm.
How does the enterprise design bridge this gap? Where do we connect, or how do we connect?
There are certain maps to do so. So in EDGY, in our framework, we have a broad variety of maps, not only capabilities. There are also product maps and service blueprints come inspired more by the service design people. And the idea here is that everybody is invited to co-design those maps. So I think the trick is that we take all those three facets and involve the hundreds, maybe thousands of co-creators. That's how we call them. So we need the creativity of the young software developer. We need the creativity of a user experience designer in a certain project. And we need them to co-create this picture that is between strategy and realization, capabilities, product design maps, and so on. Because if they co-create, they co-own, and they are committed and they know the picture, and then it's their task that all the solutions are aligned and help implementing the future state design of the enterprise, if you want.
Okay. So it's kind of a enterprises operations where you want to you want to kind of push, let's say, the enterprise agenda or stream down enterprise agenda into solution teams by having solution teams own those steps, right?
Yeah. It's kind of a bottom-up revolution. Yeah. So if you design enterprises, you can do it top-down by brute force. There's a merger. Managers close the business, and that's enterprise design by brute force. And what we want to enable is a bottom-up approach. For me, it's kind of revolutionary. Yeah, it maybe weakens the power of the one on top. Yeah? Sometimes leaders can be too autocratic, and they can impose certain design decisions because they have the power to do so. Yeah? But in reality, we know that the power of the thousands of people that are working in project every day is way stronger. They know what's going on the ground floor. They know the business and so on. So how can we ever run a broad co-design process? And EDGY is there to help with that, right? To co-create pictures. It's all about mappings and diagrams, if you want, or maps, sketches. It starts with sketches. And facilitation of connecting strategy to execution. And then we are in the social world. How can we build trust? How can we set up this broad collaboration? That's not easy, and depends on culture, of course, if you are successful.
Cool. How well does that translate to impact in the solution team in terms of how they operate, right? Is there an immediate direct impact, or is this sort of an alignment with?
I think you have the strongest impact on the solutions if they co-own it, if they understand why, if they understand the maps we need in the middle layer, because then they own it. I was part of this creative process. They listen to me. Yeah. So then you feel this enterprise awareness. Yeah. So we must strengthen the identity of the enterprise. So it's us. Yeah. It's thousands of people running for a shared purpose. It's
corporate
not
communications.
Yeah, if you want, it's not the product owner. So sometimes in my eyes, the role of the product owner is way too strong. And product owners are usually not aligned with the other products and not always aligned with strategy. Yeah, so they are really in a powerful position. They have 10, 15 people in their team, and they say, I need this feature, and nobody ever challenges if this feature is related to strategy and purpose. Yeah, so can we move away from a project mindset? That's my tribe. I have this deadline. You know how strong a culture can be in a project. Yeah. Towards an enterprise aware. Hey, that's us. So then you have a larger us. And then you have, but for that, you need a larger purpose, maybe a stronger purpose in the company that people find attractive.
I mean, it kind of, it resonates on different levels, or I would say they have kind of ideas popping up. So it's basically like a proposal is, okay, we have a set of solution teams, a community of teams, and we want to give them the notion of contributing to the overall enterprise, to the entire organization, through work on their individual product solutions, right? And this is this bottom up, right? So we're trying to build up the association with the enterprise through this design sessions, right? How do we design bottom up our enterprise, having all those teams? It kind of sounds like you had those in communism, you had those small communes, with this notion that they working together will bring about the overall social, equality and justice. On the other hand, what you mentioned, we want to reverse the direction how the enterprise awareness is led, not from top down, but from bottom up. But last couple of years, we have put into force, we need to empower product owners and teams for their, to be independent, to be kind of self-sustainable, right? And live their own life within the enterprise. And now we're saying that's not entirely, beneficial for the enterprise, right? We have a lot of messages here. Savi, I see you wanted a couple of times to say something and I keep interrupting.
No, that's fine. I was exactly the point that you're making now, Nenad. I was thinking about that. Isn't that a paradox that for a long time we've been saying to a product team that, hey, this is your product, you own it, you run it the way you want, you maintain it, automate the heck out of it, and you run your baby. And now we are saying, no, wait, but there are 10 of 20 of these others as well. Work with them also and be noble in your heart, align with the organization.
No,
I'm not that noble. I'm just a product owner.
Yeah, I think
how
I think that's not black and white in reality. Yeah, so I would agree that agile was not such a good idea. So I was always skeptical, and I'm really happy that it's dying now, at least the term. Anyway, but in reality, you must balance autonomy with centralized design, and that's really tricky. Yeah, there's a really cool book by, I forgot the name, Radical Innovation of Meaning, and there's one quote, and what they say is, the biggest innovations of mankind often are made by a single person or maybe two person in collaboration that knew it better. So you also need sometimes a visionary like Steve Jobs, who envisioned the iPhone, the iPad, and so on. And then you have thousands of engineers building it. That would not have happened bottom up, for example. So this gradual, I would say, axis between top-down autocracy, that the single leader, the single designer who knows it all, and the thousands of people on the bottom, on the ground floor, and we want to enable them, of course, must be balanced. And it was not balanced right in the days of agile back then. Because we say, okay, product, and we don't want to have dependencies. We want to minimize dependencies, for example, but it doesn't work because everything depends on everything. So I think with our approach, we want to provide a framework that helps company to balance those forces, because there are always forces from the top down that want centralized decision. And we know new work and agile, the autonomy of the individual, autonomy of teams is powerful to create the energy, but it has limits. Companies are not anarchy. Companies are not there that employees can fulfill their purpose. They're only for fun. There's always somebody who has an interest. You have an owner, you must deliver, and so on.
So a company is not a democracy, right? So
it's not a charitable thing, right? It's not for fun.
And then you have all the discussion.
For profit most of the times.
Then you have the discussions between holacracy and sociocracy. So there are models where we make decisions bottom up with some success. And I know companies that are way too autocratic with a strong leader, like 100 years ago. The big patriarch. That's also, I mean, and I'm sure that there is a balance. And I mean, edgy, we don't have the solutions for these cultural questions. We don't have, yeah. But what we can provide is a language and maps that help to achieve clarity. Yeah, this ambiguity is often a challenge. Companies don't have the clarity to define accountabilities, for example. And if you have a fussy enterprise, nobody really has the overview of what's going on. I mean, managers have an overview, of course, to some degree, but not to a sufficient degree. Yeah. If you have clarity in this middle layer, what is it what we must be capable of doing, capabilities, what are our purposes? If you are clear on the purposes, you have modeled them, and your capabilities and the products, customers, and so on, everybody knows what this company is about and where we are going, then it's way easier to find clear accountabilities and to understand what we are working on. But if you
So
have
you've spoken a couple of times about AG, you've hinted towards that. Can you tell us what is AG and what's the 2-3 top use cases of having AG?
yeah. So we say it's a framework to help people create better enterprises. And the foundation is, we call it a language, not a meta model. Yeah, so it has a very simple language. You can see it on this cap here. So we have outcomes, which is the circle element, and an arrow, which are activities, and objects, which is the square, and people in the focus. So that's the guy with the colored light. Yeah. So we have people performing activities to achieve outcomes using assets, only for base elements in this language. And the reason we want to keep it as simple as possible is that we believe that you must bring it to everybody. It's not a tool for enterprise designer, for a small community, what we want to be taught in Harvard, for example. Yeah? At the end, it's a skill managers can learn. I'm sure they can, and business experts can learn. Yeah? But you must be aware it's all about achieving outcomes. Yeah, from today, I'm giving this podcast here. That's an activity to achieve an outcome. I want to spread my ideas, and I want to have fun. That's an intended outcome, and for that I need an object. And now that's all. And everything that's going on in and around an enterprise can be modeled by only those 4 elements. That's really interesting. And then we have those perspectives. Yeah, I mentioned them. Yeah, we have the architecture facet. Then we say, okay, the microphone is probably part of the architecture because it helps me to perform my job as an enterprise designer here. That's part of the architecture. But you could also look at this object here from an identity perspective. So it's really a cool condenser microphone. It says a lot of my identity. So I invested some money. I can afford it, for example, says a bit about my identity. And I really care that my cool language and cool voice comes across. So says a bit about... Now, but then I look from it from an identity perspective, and I also can look at it as an experience perspective, which means, is it usable? What does it mean? And that's only one object, and you can look at every object in and around an enterprise from those perspectives. And you can also look at all activities that go on in and around the enterprise from those perspectives. So the way the activity I'm talking to you, the way I'm doing that says a lot about my identity. I have an accent. I'm an Austrian guy. I try to make jokes as often as possible. It's part of my personality, right? And the language has also this architecture goal. I want to bring my ideas across. That's part of the operations of Intersection Group that has the content I want to, that's the blue facet, right? And the way I'm doing it, maybe with an accent, I hope my English is good enough. Yeah, I hope my language is warm and comforting. I don't know what's the best word is. Makes the experience as convenient as I can do it. I can't do it better. Sorry, but and that's the whole idea. So we want to bring the simplest possible language to literally everybody. Yeah, in 10 years from now, we have edgy everywhere in all companies, and everybody knows it in the same way they know the org chart.
So how do you say edgy evolve as we get into a more either a prompt driven way or the AI driven way of architecting things, or even programming, where they say programming is now arguably going to get democratized? How do things like edgy evolve in that perspective?
I think that EDGY is agnostic to technology, and it will be the same in 10 years, in 100 years. So, because AI is an asset. And so we can use this example, right? Creating
It's how
code
you
would
do
be
it. The how
yeah.
part. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
creating a piece of code is, you can say it's a capability, yeah, and then you need a person. Recently, you need people, developers to do it. And in 5 years, maybe half of the work will be done by AI. That's possible, but that's an asset.
Yep.
But in capabilities in EDGY is agnostic. In the first way, we just say we want you to have the capability to implement solutions for a business. That would be a
Yeah.
capability.
It's answering the bigger questions than the smaller ones. Yeah.
And
I
then
get
you
that.
can ask the question, why do we develop code? Because we want to have those products. We are the customers of our code. And how is it related to our purposes? Then you are closer to strategy.
Yeah.
Then you also,
Do you have examples in terms of how and what was changed by implementing EDGY in an organization? Right, we're doing enterprise design in an organization. What did you observe as good things happening? Were there any kind of conflicts, resistances?
yes. Yes, in the company I'm working for, so I'm in the energy business for the Austrian transmission system operator, and I started there 4 years ago in a classical organization, not a large organization, and it's full of engineers, of course. So their focus is IT applications, data, and organizational structures. So the two and mission purpose is clear. So we are in the middle of the energy transformation. So that not much of strategy work, because we know we are a monopoly. We have clear tasks in the energy system in Europe. So the clear focus back then was how can we develop our IT applications and data and build the organizations. Those three elements only: organization, data, and IT application were in focus. Processes a bit and so on. And after 1 or 2 years working on IT applications and starting to introduce the concepts of capabilities and saying, hey, a capability always needs a team and organizational unit. It's not only about the IT systems that we need for certain capabilities. We found a couple of flaws, I would say, in the org chart. When you do that, if you look at the IT systems and you don't find clear accountabilities, because accountabilities are spread, and then you talk to business, what is this application doing? You find out that some teams may be better off when you restructure them. And that was a lot of conflict. So with the head of a business division, I think for 1 year, we didn't talk to each other. He didn't want to talk to me anymore. I mean, the good thing was it was a quite small company, only 1,000 employees. So it's not so tough to get an appointment with senior management. So that didn't take me so long to get there. But at a certain point of time, he said, no, don't want to talk to him because he's an intruder. He's intruding into my sphere, because I'm the head of this business. I'm structuring the organization and he's the IT guy. And it took me another year maybe to say, okay, it's about capabilities, and can't we design organizational structures and IT structures in one seamless? And that's a big change for many companies. And a huge flaw is that companies design org structures in a different place and IT structure in another one. If you know Conway's law, maybe you're familiar with Conway's law. Conway's law teaches us that's not a good idea. Yeah, and after 4 years, I hope that we can change that, and that our capability model will actually influence the next reorganization. I hope that will happen.
Is this so? What you shared, this is done by using EDGY framework, or let's call it plain old enterprise architecture in terms of guiding through capability maps?
I mean, you can see it from either perspective. Yeah. So what I always try to do is I try to hide the method behind it. I didn't say it's edgy what I'm doing, or TOGAF. Nobody cares about it. Yeah. I just used edgy elements, and I could have done it with other business architecture guild would have been possible. The reason why in my company the experience topic and the identity are not so big is because we're a monopoly. We don't have consumer customers. We only have business to business. So experience is not such a big topic, and that our purposes are quite clear, but not always. So it will take me some time to connect architecture also to the identity facet. Maybe that's the next year or so.
And what is it that overall kind of makes you, let's say, excited or driven, right? What is that part that, you as a Wolfgang, your identity, what makes you, interested in this topic?
I find it exciting to have an impact on a socio-technical system. So it's about people, and I love people. We know how people can be wonderful, and then they have a lot of energy when they pursue the same purpose. So this purpose-driven, helping people to create purpose-driven companies is maybe really for me meaningful, and what drives me is to move the discipline ahead, because I think mankind is not good in designing organizations. So we are where medicine was in Middle Ages, so 500 years ago. If you remember what was medicine 500 years ago, with bloodletting and disciplines that were so fragmented, and that's the same in enterprises. We have the next hype, scaled agile framework, and management consultancies. Everybody has their tools, but they don't fit together. And when you want to learn management, you learn microeconomics, macroeconomics. You don't learn to. So it's, for me, that is really astounding that mankind was able to fly to moon and deliver really cool AI, but is totally unable to design enterprises. And that's my motivation. I want to, if you want, we want to invent what medicine was. It's not only one type, but we want to build a foundation where all the tribes want to jump on an open source thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe kind of the why. I mean, Savi mentioned, we're trying to solve the gap between business and technology for 30 years, right? We have the enterprise architects all over trying to be the glue, and still it's not there. We have and this is kind of, at least in my understanding, again, a cultural thing, right? It's a social that we have different origins, backgrounds, different schooling in those terms, and we maybe even think differently in terms of engineering mindset and, I don't know, business mindset, right? So having those cultural constraints is something that is the biggest challenge to let's say fix, and here is the biggest gap. So how do you see that closing the gap?
The gap between, I'm not sure if I understood.
Like business and the engineering mindsets of an organization that are currently, in disconnect.
I think we must bring, I call it architectural thinking, to the business people, because there are concepts from engineering, basically componentization. So bringing the idea of software and all engineering where we have components and you want to have loosely coupled components, bringing them to the business world by capabilities. For me, capabilities are business components. Gartner is using this term. And modeling business components together, the org structure. So if only managers would ask themselves, how can we design capabilities and combine the IT systems we need and the roles, the people, the teams we need, and then structure by organizational units. So, and that would mean that you have a seamless co-design approach between the engineers who manage the software and the IT side and the typical org design people or the managers. So org design is nowhere. I hope nobody's listening. So there are communities. they
Let's
are
hope
calling
nobody
them.
is listening to this
Yeah,
podcast.
I mean, yeah. So they are culture. I mean, shouldn't be too dismissive, but typically the managers, they don't listen to the enterprise architects neither. So they want to be, and establishing a simple concept like business components capabilities, and bringing it to them so that they understand that it's our tech, it's our assets, it's our applications, it's our teams, and we must co-design it together, would change everything.
So,
Yeah.
Wolfgang, if somebody is listening to this podcast and they get fascinated by these ideas and they want to know more about architectural thinking, about EDGY, what are some of the resources you would recommend to folks?
So the promo session, so it's enterprise.design. That's easy, huh?
Okay.
Enterprise.design. So that's that's the documentation of EDGY, and where we announce the new tools. And we have intersection.group. You can follow us on LinkedIn. If you go to Intersection Group, that's our association. We are a not-for-profit association, and we take this seriously. So we are not like other not-for-profit associations that make profit. In America, it's possible. In Austria, it's not. So we're really driven by passion. And if you want to be part of this community, you can follow us on LinkedIn, of course, Intersection Group, or you can go to intersection.group to see our latest events. So we do webinars and a conference, and a lot of stuff is going on.
Sure. We will pin all of that in the description as well. Folks can access it.
Yes, for sure. I am really interested to see how this, bridging the cultural gaps will happen, because that's the toughest. We always tend, humans, people tend to, split themselves into tribes, right?
Yes.
We're these guys against that guys. And what the general idea is that basically we need to understand that we are working together, we have common goals, common ideas, and we should work towards achieving those within our own small confines. So it's like, think globally, act locally. It's that kind of a mindset, and it's universal, right? So I would say it's not just about how to design organizations, how to design communities, etc.
I think our answer to that is clarity. So a lot of conflict does not come because people are doing maleficent stuff or are evil and want to have conflicts. It's ambiguity. And companies are ambiguous. Nobody really knows what's going on. The knowledge is distributed on hundreds of people, and the people on top think they have a clue. I mean, they know, of course, most of the time they know what's going on, but not to sufficient detail. So we want to bring clarity and make those maps part of everyday's business life, that we have this shared understanding of where we are today, that's as is, EDGY models, capabilities, others, purposes, and so on, and the future states, where are we going? So we want to, if you want, enrich the typical strategy process, move away from only sentences where you, and maybe some goals, to more meaningful models, because clarity reduces conflicts.
Do you think that having like trainings for business people in enterprise design is something that is important or crucial for this?
Yes, of course. Of course. I mean, currently our community consists mainly of business analysts, business architects, UX designers, so we don't reach them yet. We know that with the way we spread our message, we tell our story, we must be better in telling it to management consultants, for example, or to executives. We see that people who sign up for our trainings, usually they have a similar profile. 40 years plus, most of them very seasoned business analysts, business architects. No management consultant ever attended our trainings. Maybe we don't speak the language.
They know everything, so they don't need trainings.
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
the definition of a consultant, right?
But I also think, like what we started, like, as you said, 40 plus years, you need to get to that age group where you start going to philosophy more often than not, right? And you start thinking about stuff, not just how to do the next thing, but just you're more thoughtful, right? And this is something that, to go back, is part of the architectural thinking. How to think like an architect, how to make components work together, structures. And this is what the architect's lens is all about. Yes.
What a beautiful and smooth closure, Nenad.
I
Well
wanted,
done.
because I'm
Well done,
trying
well
to
done.
be
wanted to
conscious
say that.
about the time.
Yeah,
I wanted to be conscious about the time and to
Smooth.
have an exit point where I can then cut.
Yeah, that's
Smoothly
good.
done. Smoothly done.
So Savi, you and I, we shouldn't say anything more because Nenad does a perfect job in closing this
Yeah,
session.
it was beautiful. It was like a symphony.
This is just one take. We can close differently, no problem. I would definitely like Wolfgang, for you to close, because it's kind of you're the guest. I like to have a closing words. I mean,
Okay,
you did a nice not closing, but summary of EDGY and next things. So that's like also usable. But what would your closing words be?
My closing words would be, I'm a firm believer that we can close the gap. So this business IT gap and the gap between disciplines for the purpose of the millions of people employed and employees, to make them more fun. Yeah? I'm a firm believer that this is possible. And we believe that a simple language and simple maps that are able to represent the SEs and future are crucial to do so. Yeah, and would invite everybody who's watching today to join our community. We are slowly growing, so we are truly open source and not for profit and so on. So, and if you like those ideas, connect to that. Maybe together we can make this kind of bottom-up revolution. It's not; it should not threaten. The ones on top are also important, but we need the people. We need many co-designers for EDGY as well. So,
Hope we can help with that.
Yeah, please.
Now,
I also want to take a shot at it. Why not? Yeah.
Savi, do you have your closing so that I can?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at it as well. So, I think in today's world where people are getting a little confused with all of this AI happening, what's the direction of software development? What am I going to do? I think this is a good segue to give them a sense of purpose and to give them a better understanding that hey, all of this will come and go. The way we create software might change a little bit, but there are bigger purposes to enterprises. There is a bigger vision out there. And this is good food for thought. And hopefully it rekindles something in the developers, in the architects, in the solution architects, in the business folks. So I would highly recommend folks to go out and check EDGY and the Intersection Group. And hopefully some fire will light somewhere, which will make you excited again.
Perfect, Sally. Great.
Thank you.
Well,
right. We have three closings and 3 episodes.
3 closings. Yeah, we'll use them all.
Yeah.
Wolfgang, thank you for joining us and being our guest.
Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah.
Really.
I hope that we can do it again and share some lessons learned in between. Until then, again, thank you and hope you enjoyed this session and hope to hear from you soon. Savi.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Cheers.